For anything like me and grew up on a lot of Nintendo YouTubers, you've probably heard a lot of people saying that A Link to the Past is their favorite Zelda game. While I've had my fair share of experiences with The Legend of Zelda, I've only beaten a couple of the games and didn't grow up with A Link to the Past. Every time I'd try to give it a shot, I'd end up putting it down by the end of the second dungeon, and I'd always wonder what is it about this game that has so many people thinking it's the best. I also had this issue with the quasi-sequel game A Link Between Worlds, where for years I could maybe get through a dungeon or two before dropping it, but then all of a sudden one weekend everything in the game clicked and I blitzed through it all in 2 sittings. I was so enamored with every detail and it all just made sense. So now, after giving it some time, I'm once again going back to A Link to the Past, this time determined that no matter what, I was going to see it through until the end credits. So, has playing the sequel helped me appreciate the original? Does it feel outdated for someone that didn't grow up with it? Well, I finally understand why everyone loves A Link to the Past. A Link to the Past was released in Japan in 1992 and then later in North America and Europe in 1993 to near unilateral praise. It was the best looking game, the best feeling game, and to just many flat out the best game they had ever played at that point. And a lot of people still hold that sentiment today. The legacy that this game has left in its wake is astounding and is truly something to be celebrated. It's why I've always been interested in playing it, even if it would never hold my interest to the end credits. And it cements its presence right from the start screen. The Triforce fading into view with 3D effects that were still mind-blowing for the time, to then be met with one of the most iconic menu themes in all of gaming. The game starts with thunder and lightning spreading across Hyrule as your uncle tells you that he is going to the castle to rescue Princess Zelda and warns you to stay behind. Obviously, you disregard what he says and follow his lead. You soon come across him lying on the floor and he gives you his sword and shield and asks you to rescue the princess in his stead. After making your way to the depths of the castle, you find Zelda and she warns you that the wizard Aghanim has brainwashed the soldiers of the castle and that she fears her father may be in danger. The two of you escape to the sanctuary where you are made aware that a sage known as Sarasala, am I saying that right? Probably not, lives in Kakariko village. And he may know how to acquire the Master Sword, the blade that is needed in order to defeat the darkness that is invading Hyrule. You discover that the sage isn't currently in the village and has gone to the Eastern Palace. Once you find him there, he says that only the legendary hero who has gathered all 3 of the pendants of the palaces will be able to wield the legendary sword and tasks you with collecting the first pendant. After showing that you are worthy to him, he reveals the location of the other 2 palaces and sets you off to gather the other 2 pendants. Once you're in possession of all 3, you make your way to the Lost Woods where the Master Sword lies, waiting to be released from its seal. When you do, the sage sends you a telepathic message that you can now deflect the magic of the evil wizard. After making your way back to Hyrule Castle, you challenge Aghanim, and once he is almost defeated, he drags you into the Dark World. The Dark World, once upon a time, was known as the Golden Land. It was where the Triforce lied and waited for someone to reach it, for whoever is able to touch the Triforce will have their wishes granted. An evil being known as Ganon was able to make his way to the Triforce and wished for world domination, thus changing the Golden Land into what it is now. However, Ganon is not content with just ruling over the Dark World and tends to invade Hyrule and is trying to open a gate to link the 2 worlds together. In order to stop him, you need to find a way to get past the barrier surrounding his castle. The only way to do that is to rescue the 7 maidens that are descendants of the 7 sages, who are being held captive in temples around the Dark World. After finally rescuing all of them, the last being Princess Zelda herself, she asks Link to go to Ganon's castle and finish him off once and for all. After climbing the tower, you find Aghanim, and after defeating him again, it's revealed that he was actually Ganon's alter ego. Ganon attempts to make an escape, but our hero follows him and finishes him off for good. Sort of. Shortly after defeating the evil being, you discover the hidden location of the Triforce, where you are able to grasp it and make your wish to get rid of the Dark World and to go back to Hyrule the way it was before. While it isn't the most in-depth story filled with layered character development, it set the standard for what a Zelda story should be for almost 25 years. So many iconic things of the franchise started here. Kakariko Village, 3 starting dungeons and the second half containing 7 more, the Master Sword for crying out loud. It shaped so much of Zelda's identity, no wonder it's so many people's favorite. So why have I never been able to see it in the same light? Well, for starters, the first Zelda game I ever remember playing was Majora's Mask on the Nintendo 64, and the first one I ever owned and had beaten was Ocarina of Time for the 3DS. So trying to go back to the Super Nintendo, which is a downgrade visually not due to any fault of its own, was a bit difficult for my younger self. As I've matured a bit, I find it easy to go back and I'm fully capable of enjoying the 16-bit aesthetic in its entirety. Now, what do I actually think about the game itself? starts off wonderfully. The atmosphere created by roaming around the depths of the castle and having to escape with the princess, and the overworld is bright and colorful and fun to explore. You get the Pegasus boost after the first dungeon, which increases the speed you're able to travel around immensely. Everything is snappy and controls well. I even had to replay the first half of this game again because while recording footage, I noticed right after I made it to the Dark World that everything looked like this. And it didn't decrease the enjoyment I had one bit. Well, except for Moldorm. Is he the most complained about part of the game? Yes. Is that going to stop me? Absolutely not. The first time I played, which may I remind you looks like this, I beat him without getting knocked down, so I chalked it up to, yes, I am incredibly skilled at this game and anyone who complains must be bad. But the next time around, oh my god, I couldn't stay on the platform. Every single time I'd get ahead and he would switch up his patterns so drastically and fling me off the edges careening down below. But I powered through and beat him again. And then forgot to save and had to do it a third time. But then for a while, everything was alright. I'm progressing smoothly, beat a few more dungeons with no issues, and then comes the Ice Palace. Okay, I would like to extend a very kind, whoever made the ice physics suck you to the edges of the platforms, a very kind, I really wish you didn't do that. Not only is it frustrating to control, but when you're placed in tight areas, you're constantly being thrown from one side of the path to the other, causing you to fall off because you overcorrect yourself. This stupid bit at the end where you're only able to move one of the stone statues before reaching the boss. I only tried the first one and thought since it didn't work, the other one couldn't be pulled either, and I'd have to find some other way to move the two of them. After searching around and finding absolutely nothing in the dungeon, I cracked and looked up a guide only to be told that I actually could in fact just move the other one. Why is it like that? And not to mention, you need a full match meter to even be able to defeat the boss. That was fun. I would stand there and let it kill me, then let my bottled fairy revive me before dying again. And the pain didn't stop there. I couldn't figure out how to get to the palace in the swamp, and after not making progress, I went to the in-game guide. There's a fortune teller there that gives you hints on where to go, and early game he helped a lot, but eventually he just kept telling me to go to the cave besides the blacksmith, so I once again cracked and found out I need to get a flute, and then play that at this statue in Kakariko Village, and then that unlocks 8 teleport points, and one is right next to an entrance to the next palace. Turtle Rock wasn't that bad. However, there was this one room that was driving me up a wall. It's dark with no way to light it up, and there's fire bars that are impossible to avoid because you can't control the platform you're on completely. I think the areas you're supposed to be able to turn at are marked with these thick dots, but I swear half the time it didn't even matter if I was inputting a direction, it would continue on its merry way straight into fire. The thing is, I really only had issues with the late game. Everything before was so much fun and everything was clicking, but that experience of the end dampers the overall impression a bit, but not by much. Honestly, right after I finished the game, I was so confident that I didn't like it, and all these minor annoyances had compounded so much that it totally ruined the experience and that I'd never replay the game again. But after taking some time and writing them out, they're really not that bad. It's a short game too. Even though this was my first time playing it, I still beat it in about 10 hours, and if I were to play it again, it'd probably only be about 8 since I know what I'm doing now. If this is someone's first experience with the franchise, I can see how this would be your favorite. It's very well crafted and has a ton to do and 2 different worlds you can explore. However, I can't even call this my favorite Zelda game. That title will more than likely always belong to Majora's Mask. But that's the thing, I grew up with that game, so it will always have that nostalgia factor that gives it an extra boost, even if you are able to put together an incredible case that A Link to the Past is actually the better game. If there was anything I could change, it would really only be that the fortune teller switches up his hints if you've gotten him already, especially because he warns you about something that technically isn't even necessary to beat the game. One last note I want to touch on, the OST. The SNES sound font can bring out nostalgia no matter if you've played the game before or not, but I would find myself constantly listening to something else while going through the dungeons. The song loops so quickly and isn't all that interesting, but that's the only real stinker. I cannot get enough of the Fairy Fountain theme. The first time it debuted in the franchise, and it's aged wonderfully. The Dark World theme, oh man, sets the tone of setting out on an epic quest to save the world so well. The song that plays right when you go to the Dark World for the first time and get turned to a rabbit makes you tense up with that quick piercing bass line, giving you the feeling that something's off with the current state of things despite not having any knowledge of where you're at. After finally playing this game all the way through, I can see the makings of what would be someone's favorite game of all time. but I think it never really had a fair shot at becoming one of my favorites playing it as late as I have. If someone says it's their favorite, it's not something you can really argue about because of how good it is. If you have not played this game yet, or even a Zelda game in general, I highly recommend that you give this game a try. That being said, and I appreciate you for watching the video all the way through. If you've made it this far, leave a like and a comment letting me know what your favorite Zelda game is and why. I'd love to hear your stories. Also, subscribe if you're not already for more videos like this in the future. Have a good one.